Good morning and welcome to Morning Scoop for Monday, February 28th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The spring game is in 47 days, the Notre Dame game in 187 days, the game against Michigan in 271 days. We are back to our countdown to spring football series today. Last week we looked at the defensive line. Saturday we looked at the linebackers. Today we're going to be talking about the defensive backs. And between the corners and the safeties, there is a lot to talk about. So my guest once again is Buckeye Scoop's Kevin Noon. Kevin, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
It feels like on the defense, this might be the area with the most to discuss, and it's kind of because we're lumping two position groups here together, but between those two position groups, a new defensive coordinator, some guys coming back from serious injuries, new position coaches at both of those groups, I mean, there's a lot of questions right now. So let's start with the guy who has the most to gain this spring, whether that is winning a starting job, getting into the rotation. Who to you is that this spring for the Buckeyes in the defensive backfield?
I think in a lot of ways it's going to be Tanner McAllister coming in, the Oklahoma State transfer who followed his coordinator, Jim Knowles, to the Buckeyes. I mean, he's somebody he has the benefit of knowing the Knowles system, coming up in the Knowles system, but it's going to be on a new team dealing with different personnel. He's got so much to gain in terms of going through the Ohio State spring process, going through a spring game. I think all of that's going to be very important for him because I think we look at corner and we see, we see some known quantities there. We look at safety, we don't necessarily need to see Ronnie Hickman come out and have a huge spring. We kind of know what's going on there. We don't know what a timetable is going to be for somebody like Josh Proctor coming off of injury. I think when we just look at everything, when we look at that cover safety position, it's going to be hugely important for Tanner McAllister to come in and show what made him one of the higher leverage type of transfer people that were out there for Ohio State to land and bring into this system.
It's interesting when you talk about McAllister because normally you think of a guy transferring in, kind of coming in and being a little behind the curve with it, compared to everyone else, where everyone else has been in the system for a while and sort of knows things, and you've got to kind of get up to speed. This is kind of the opposite. He's the one who's up to speed on what Jim Knowles wants to do, and now everyone else has to catch up. And they were talking earlier in the month about the fact that Tanner McAllister is like helping other guys. He's like the Rosetta Stone so they can translate from Jim Knowles speak into what they can understand. So he comes in with maybe a little bit of a head start, which is kind of backwards from what you would normally think for a transfer. But yeah, in that, whatever we want to call it, we've called it the slot corner before when it was Shaun Wade playing that role, but it's the cover safety now with Jim Knowles. Yeah, that role, that seems like he's probably going to be the guy there. If he has a good spring, he can probably kind of cement himself there as the starter this year. So that would definitely be a good thing for him, and probably a good thing for Ohio State if they have someone who is in that role who they don't need to worry about. He gets it, he knows it, no problem. Is there someone now who, in this defensive backfield, who you think this maybe is a little bit of a make or break spring for? And again, just to sort of define this is someone who's maybe been around a little while, maybe in danger of getting passed by some of the people behind him on the depth chart, maybe someone who it's like, you want to see some movement towards more playing time. Like, is there someone in the defensive backfield who you feel like that fits that role this spring?
See, and that's a tough one to answer. Of all of the position groups, this is the one that I struggled with the most because, I think if you look at the free safety position and you figure that that's going to be Josh Proctor's come fall, you might sit there and say, well, Bryson Shaw might need to sit there and have a big spring. But if we're not going to see Proctor out there taking reps, and I mean, again, I'm not a doctor. I haven't seen the X-rays. I don't know how long it's going to take anybody to come back, but prevailing knowledge out there says that it takes a minute. So I think it's going to be very important. Bryson Shaw needs to come out and just flourish in this system to be able to try and hold off the return of Josh Proctor. I think that's going to be the guy that it's going to be the most important. They're young guys that have, are going to have more opportunities moving forward. You could sit there and certainly look at some of the young corners who are going to be there, like Kalen Johnson, Jordan Hancock, guys like that. But it's not a case of, well, it's now or never. You need to get it done or your opportunity is going to go. Now, what we may be facing at some point is with Ohio State 6 over the scholarship limit, there may be some guys who come out of spring and say, well, I just don't know what my path looks like. but I don't think it's going to be any of these higher end guys at this point. I think they're all within the plans. I just think it's going to be very important if Bryson Shaw is going to be expecting to play even 70% as much as he did last year once they lost Proctor. I mean, he's going to have to come out and just have a Herculean effort for the spring. So I'm going to go with Bryson Shaw.
A couple other names I thought about in this conversation. Legend Cavazos, who's kind of behind the two corners. You're behind Cam Brown, you're behind Denzel Burke, certainly. But then you have, the two true freshman corners from last year, Jordan Hancock, J.K. Johnson. Those are both guys that came in with a lot of hype, a lot of expectation, and then didn't get to play a ton last year, but now this is a second year for them, and you may hear me talk about them again in a couple questions, but, can he stay ahead of, can Legend Cavazos stay ahead of those guys on the depth chart, or does he, if one or two of those guys passes him, then that route to the field gets a little trickier for him. Another guy who's been in that 2020 class who's kind of going into his third year now, Cam Martinez. You figure he's still in the mix at that slot corner / cover safety spot, probably, but if you have, if you've got Tanner McAllister winning that job this fall, can Cam Martinez sort of get playing time there? How does he fit in there? This is a little bit of a big spring for him. We saw him running back punts at one point during practice before the Rose Bowl, so maybe he is taking a bigger role at special teams. This feels like this is kind of a big spring for him there as well. Sort of, where does he fit on this team? As he has playmaking ability, where does he fit on this team to continue to grow that role? Is there someone who you think is the star player in this defensive backfield? Is there a let me just say, I suspect the answer will rhyme with Schmenzel Schmirk, but is there a future star in this defensive backfield for Ohio State?
I was so excited to answer the question. I hit my microphone right there. Yeah, I'm going to say Denzel Burke. I think that he certainly could be the next in that line of Ohio State first round corners. I mean, is he there yet today? No, he's not there yet today. But I mean, he's certainly well on his way. He's certainly shown a thing or 12 during his season last year. I mean, he did play dinged up toward the end of the year. I think it was during the Michigan game, he really didn't look like he wanted to take on a lot of contact, but he was dealing with a shoulder or something along those lines. I think that Burke certainly is the guy that is going to be the top end there. Somebody else just as kind of a 1A that I've liked throughout his career, just as long as he can stay out on the field, is Cameron Brown, also at corner. I think Cameron Brown is really good. I think somebody's going to get a good value drafting him at some point. I think he's going to have a pretty good NFL career once it's all said and done. And then, you know what, just because I want to name all the names and leave you none, I think that Ronnie Hickman could have a really good year too. I think that Ronnie showed us some things toward the end of last year, but just since we're talking corners and safeties, let me throw a safety in because equal opportunity here. Don't want to just sit there and fall in love with the high dollar corner position. I think Hickman's somebody that could have, is got that star potential.
Yeah, he's someone for sure. I think he led the team in tackles last year. I think he was over 100 tackles last year, which is something that they have not had for a while. So, yeah, he is definitely a playmaker there, and I think he's someone you're just kind of penciling into the starting lineup already for this year. Yeah, and this could be, this could potentially be his last year at Ohio State. So yeah, that's a good answer as well. You mentioned a couple of the freshmen, the redshirt freshman corners earlier, both of whom I think are probably going to be my answers to this one. But is there a freshman, either true freshman or redshirt freshman, who you are particularly excited to see this spring?
The player I'm most excited to see this spring will not be here this spring.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be Sonny Styles, who will be finishing up his coursework at Pickerington Central. I did talk to somebody around his high school program. It's going to be he's not going to have to go through summer. He's going to be done with his coursework at the end of spring, so he can be at Ohio State for summer. But when it comes to guys that are actually going to be there, I've been all in on Ja'Kalen Johnson or J.K. Johnson, since they got him. I felt that I did not predict Denzel Burke being the first one to emerge from that class. I thought that it would be Ja'Kalen Johnson. With Jordan Hancock maybe being pretty close there, it ended up being Burke, so, credit to Burke. But I think Ja'Kalen Johnson is going to be somebody that really could have a great spring. And while Denzel Burke is not somebody who's part of that, whatever it was called, 1,000 rep club, I mean, he still needs to get the work out there. I think it's going to be very important for Ohio State, especially as you have you have a new defensive coordinator, you have two new secondary coaches. They're going to want to see as much out of everybody as they can. They're going to want to know what the pecking order looks like at corner. They want to know what Ja'Kalen Johnson looks like. They're going to want to know what Jordan Hancock looks like. They certainly have some talented true freshmen coming in, but I think in other categories it's a lot easier for us to focus in on the true freshmen. But when you have a couple of redshirt freshmen, the way that Ohio State does, that's where I'm going to gravitate toward.
Yeah, those redshirt freshman corners, Johnson, J.K. Johnson, and Jordan Hancock, both of them, I'm very, very interested to see what this looks like, because you don't normally get the true freshman who steps on the field and starts from day one like Denzel Burke does. That's not the traditional route to the field for an Ohio State corner. You typically have that year of development and growth, and a lot of them will redshirt or just play very sparingly. And then that second year, you start to see them, and they're not superstars yet, but they're kind of start to get on the field and get into that rotation the second year. And then the third year is when they kind of really take off. That has sort of been the trajectory for a lot of those future first-round Ohio State corners. This is kind of the, okay, next step, let's see what it looks like for those two guys this year, because we saw them in practice a little bit last year, but really didn't play a whole heck of a lot during games. You saw just a little bit during games, but yeah, those are two guys that I'm interested to see. One of the true freshmen coming in that I'm very intrigued by is Kai Stokes. Kai Stokes is safety. I like him a lot. I think he's, I'm not projecting him to start this year or anything like that. There's a lot of other guys at the safety spots that he would have to battle through, but I think he's someone, just keep an eye on him and put a pin in him, and maybe he's a special teams guy this year. Maybe he just contributes a little bit on defense, but I'm interested to sort of see what the what point A is on the point A to point B for Kai Stokes in his career at Ohio State. So I think he's another guy to keep an eye on this spring.
I'll jump in on Kai Stokes really quick. He has not played safety for much of his career, so he's learning that position. I think he's going to be somebody to kind of go back to the linebacker show where we had guys that had not played linebacker or hadn't played linebacker at the college level who all of a sudden are these great linebackers. Kai Stokes is going to be somebody who's going to benefit by having an opportunity to kind of go through the minutia of it all. And I think that once he figures it out and really understands the intricacies of playing safety, I think he's by far, and we'll probably do a show on this here at some point, I think he could be the biggest steal in that class for them, because I really like him as well.
Yeah, Tony Gerdeman and I did, one of those real early bold prediction shows for the early enrollee freshmen, and I planted my flag on Kai Stokes pretty early in that one in terms of maybe one of the first guys to lose his black stripe. He's someone who I think, like you said, he's not going to be a day one guy, but that's okay because they have a million safeties right now, so they don't need him to be a day one guy. If a year from now we're talking about Kai Stokes as someone who's battling for a starting job in spring 2023, I think that's probably a pretty big win for Kai Stokes and for the Buckeyes. Last question: the biggest concern at the back end of that defense, and it feels like there are a couple possible answers here, but what's the biggest concern to you coming in?
I don't know. I'm trying to kind of prioritize here. I mean, I just think it's going to be a matter of I want to see what that free safety position is going to look like. I mean, is Josh Proctor going to come back and be Josh Proctor? I mean, are we going to be able to see Bryson Shaw maybe take a little bit more of a step forward? You're certainly dealing with a situation. I mean, somebody else that would be penciled in that position is Lathan Ransom, and he's he got hurt. So I mean, what does that free safety position look like? I don't want to keep going back to once again, we don't know what 21 to 22 is going to look like under this Jim Knowles system. But, I think of any of the position groups, that's the one I feel the best about, because you have Tanner McAllister, who can almost act as a coach out there on the field. Granted, Tanner McAllister has to be out there on the field, so he needs to make sure that he comes out there and earns that position. But, I think that while we know what they have in terms of guys like Denzel Burke, what they have in terms of guys like Cameron Brown, what they have in terms of guys like Ronnie Hickman, where's the depth going to come from? Is this going to be a year where Court Williams is going to be able to take a step forward in terms of backing him up? Is this going to be the type of year of where, who's going to emerge as the number two corners? I mean, is it going to be Johnson and Hancock? Are we going to see Legend Cavasso step up? We're going to see a young kid like Jair Brown come in. So I don't know. I pretty much hit on several things, hoping that I've given you the answer you're looking for, but I'm concerned about all of it.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of questions back there. I mean, to me, the answer is, what does Josh Proctor look like? When is he going to be healthy? What does Lathan Ransom look like? When is he going to be healthy? I mean, Jansen Dunn missed the end of the year with a knee injury last year. I mean, you've got a bunch of guys in that safety rotation who I think, I mean, they're leaning on Proctor more than they're leaning on someone like Jansen Dunn, but Proctor and Ranson have both played like really meaningful snaps and big moments for Ohio State. Both of them have played in college football playoff games and played significant minutes in college football playoff games. They both are coming off of pretty bad leg injuries. When are they healthy? When are they 100%? How far behind are they going to be? So that's I think you hit on the big questions there, the big concerns there. So Kevin, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely.
Thank you again to Kevin for joining me, and thank you to all for joining us as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. That will help other folks find this show. It's a small thing you can do that makes a big difference on our end, so we really appreciate when you guys do that. If you are watching on YouTube again, hit that bell, subscribe to our channel. That'll get you notified every time we post a new video, so you never miss a thing. Every time we post a new camp video, player interview, podcast, you name it, it's all at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. Then you subscribe to our channel, you get notified every time we post something. And then finally, if you are listening on a podcast platform, make sure you check out all of our other great podcasts. Kevin does the Big Me Kickoff, Gives in the Bank with Mark Givler and Bill Green, Around the Oval with Alex Gleitman, Buckeye Weekly with Tony Gerdman and myself. They're all free. They're all on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Just search Buckeye Scoop to find all of them. You can subscribe right there. Also leave us a 5-star rating and review, which will help other folks find those shows as well. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.